day. So now we have made it specifically clear, although it's always been the case. But so the aim is that the departments will work better so they could serve the public better. In the policy address, I made it very clear that there will be a two-tier investigations mechanism. I made clear what the two tiers are. The first one are problems of no specific public concern. But then tier two involves serious problem that is a widespread or repetitive systemic problem, or the HOD is implicated. And so we need to delineate clearly who or attribute responsibility properly to different parties. So that's why I said we must then set up the investigation panel. Because if something happens, then who should we appoint to conduct the investigation? For example, the recent case involved the government logistics department, and then we have the audit commission, that's an independent party, and it can then conduct investigation. But then in another incident, maybe it so happens there is not a counterpart independent party that could carry out investigation. And then maybe we don't know which, if we just appoint any department to do so, the public may question whether it is reliable or not. So that's why I have put in place a system that is there must be precision, independence, and comprehensive investigation. That means the investigation could reach the very top of the senior official level. So maybe with investigation, eventually they could trace the matter to a very senior civil servant. Investigations could still be carried out because we have a fair system in place now. And then if the public are not confident in the investigation, it may not be fair to the parties involved. Maybe because investigation proves that the responsibility should not be attributed to a certain party. But then if the public are not confident, then it will be unfair to the parties involved, and the public will still remain unhappy. So the system is not here for any particular person or any particular incident. That's why the system is the fairest way. And then we make sure that it is a precise and efficient system. And we also want to drive HODs to do something. HODs will now realize they have heavy responsibilities. And then if it's something goes wrong with their subordinates, they are also held accountable. So that's why it's in line with my philosophy that we can always do better. And so they could make improvements any time. Maybe internally they spot any problems, then they could make improvements on their own initiative. But then, of course, I'm stressed too that we have an outstanding civil service team. You know, Hong Kong is ranked second globally in terms of government efficiency, according to the World Competitiveness Yearbook 2025. But of course, even if that's the case, problems, they arise because any person could get sick. It's the same thing. So now with the system in place, you believe that it will be easier for you to take forward policies. Now you spend much in the column in the policy address on the Northern Metropolis. You say you're going to set up a committee, the committee on the Northern Metropolis, and you lead the committee. So is there a time frame? How are you going to speed up progress? Now, with since I assumed office in 2022, we said we would divide the Northern Metropolis into 4 zones. And some, may have a program of 15 years, 10 years, 20 years, and so on. Well, of course, we want things to move faster, but then we're talking about huge investment. So that's where leaders come in. That is what I should do with Zone A or Zone B, and how do we set priorities, and so on. We need to decide on that. Now, in 2022, I set up a steering committee. And so what I did with that steering committee is to build my team and then assign responsibilities to different persons. And so we have decided how we will proceed with the plan. It's been 3 years since, and now it's time when we do the actual work, when we try to create huge value from this project. So that's why there will be 3 working groups with specific functions. First one, that's are we going to set up a company? Yes, we'll set up companies, and there will be more than one. For example, the airport authority is a successful example. And the airport authority manages just 2% of the land size of the Northern Metropolis. Northern Metropolis is huge, and each zone has different characteristics. In one zone, we will focus on one particular industry, and another zone will focus on something else. That's why there's need to set up different companies. And then competition will be good too. And then some companies will be set up by the government, some will be set up by developers. So some can be achieved through administrative measures. For others, we may need to enact legislation. So that's why I need to lead a committee to decide on priorities. And I've already assigned the top 3 officials to take up the task. The Financial Secretary and the Deputy Financial Secretary and another Deputy Chief Secretary. And then the Chief Secretary is responsible for the building of the university town. Why? Because he chairs the Committee on Education, Technology and Talent. And then with the university town in the Northern Metropolis, I want it to be more than just a university town. I want it to help with some industrial development. So now, of course, there will be industries moving into the Northern Metropolis, and they may move elsewhere too, but then Northern Metropolis will be the major base. And then, of course, the Science Park and Cyberport are also successful, but then Northern Metropolis will be another major base. So we want there to be proper matching with industries, and then we could promote the development of industries. Now I hand over to Jessica Law of TMHK. Now, can I ask more questions about the Northern Metropolis Chief Executive? Now, you have stated clearly that you will simply streamline processes. So how much faster could you move then? And what are your plans? And can you tell us what are the major constraints in the past? Well, there are 2 parts. One is on administrative measures, the other is on electing legislation. For administrative measures, I can take the lead there. I can steer that. For example, with certain vetting processes, we are already adopting certain processes in certain areas, so we could do that too for the Northern Metropolis. For example, maybe in the past, there could be delays in vetting, but it won't be the case. And then there is also a working group to deal with the end-to-end process. That means from the start to the realization of the project, there won't be just the responsibility of one policy bureau. Instead, we have a deputy secretary to take charge of that. And of course, if there's need to enact legislation, we could do so. For example, we may need to set up a statutory body. In the past, we may need to consider a new piece of legislation altogether. And then maybe we need to set up 5 or 7 platform companies. Then we will need to enact 7 pieces of legislation. But then this legislation could be similar. So in that case, can we do it under one ordinance by way of subsidiary legislation? Of course, I respect views of LegCo members, and I'm sure LegCo members want to see the project be accelerated. Because in my policy address, I've taken on board views from many LegCo members in this respect. And of course, they have wisdom on such issues. And of course, we make sure Hong Kong does not serve a particular interest. We serve the public. And so there may be a need to go through a legislative procedure. And then there could be discussion during the process, and bills could be amended. But then we could speed things up. For example, when I assumed office, 6 pieces of legislation were amended. It's about having the time for making spade-ready sites, in particular for major projects. And so if we are including more sites here, then we could save even more time. And then we also introduce construction methods that will save time and money. Let's take a break. Please stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Chief Executive's 2025 Policy Address Forum. Lim Ka-ping from RTHK. Chief Executive, I'd like to ask again about the Heads of Department Accountability System. The most serious consequence could be removal of duty or dismissal. How serious could things be in order for the civil servants to get dismissed? We're talking about a civil service system. It is clearly stated in our rules that there is a committee and disciplinary procedures. The committee makes the decision of what kind of punishment should be given based on the severity of the cases. It's hard for me to say under what circumstances a civil servant should get the most serious punishment. It is really up to the actual circumstances. Of course, I don't want to see punishment to happen. In previous cases, some civil servants got criminal charges, and so they got dismissed. Mr. Conrad Lau from TVB. Chief Executive, you said that livelihood issues is one of the major highlights of this policy address, and you said you want to enrich the housing ladder. There have been rumors that the tenants' purchase scheme will be revived, but this is not included in this policy address. Have you had a discussion of this? Why was this scheme not revived? And will you, within your term, revive the scheme? There are always speculations about the policy address. So I understand why people are concerned about this scheme. Tenants' purchase scheme existed because of its values. 39 housing estates were included in the tenants' purchase scheme. So it could amount to some 90% or 50% of the total number of public housing units or estates. Some 10% of the tenants were not interested in purchasing the public housing flats, but some are interested. There must be some reasons behind why people weren't interested. It is possible for us to revive the scheme, but we have to think it through. How can we make sure that not all of the units in the 39 housing estates are not sold? Some do not want to buy the flats because they are too old. This is understandable. There are also management issues. There are ways to resolve these issues. But are there ways for us to completely tackle these issues? We have to look into them. The housing department can take care of these issues. However, it's not time for us yet to make a decision. So I hope we can get more view from people about the scheme to make it more popular. We also see from the policy address you also mentioned in the Legislative Council that we're in the stage of transformation. We don't see any short-term or quick fixes to revive the economy yet. In your concluding remarks, you mentioned that we will usher in hopes. When will people see hopes? Well, you can look at it from the micro or macro perspectives. From the macro perspectives, there are few things that lead to the growth of GDP. First, investment, second, consumption, and third, government expenditure, and fourth, imports and exports. If we want to revive our economy from the macro perspective, we also want to do so from the micro perspective. There are indirect and direct measures. Industry development is one of the macro policies. Speeding up the development of the northern metropolis is also a macro policy. Bringing in emerging industries can also boost our revenue. All these can push our community to do better in terms of its economy. Now, from the micro perspective, some industries can benefit faster. Take financial sector or the trade sector. So we are seeing a shift. For example, the F&B industry, we are seeing changes in this sector. During this shift, some are making more money. Others are facing more challenges. We have done an analysis. For the catering sector, there are people who are making more money. For instance, for non-Chinese restaurants, they are making more profit, an increase of 4%. For fast food restaurants, again, they're making 4% more profit. For Chinese-style restaurants, they are seeing a drop of businesses of 4%. How can the government offer help to those who are facing challenges and difficulties? Some restaurants, they do not have enough staff, and we should enable them to hire more people. Others are abusing the existing mechanism. We are aware of that, so we are introducing a mechanism to combat abuse. As mentioned in the policy address, we are ensuring a manning ratio for importing waiters as well as junior cooks. We're also combating illegal workers. We have to offer help to those in need. I am rolling out 11 measures to help SMEs. Another measure to boost economic growth is that we are reserving $30 billion for public works projects. This is because we're seeing a drop in terms of private works projects. We're increasing the amount from $90 billion to $120 billion. In the coming 3 years, we're earmarking another $30 billion. All these measures are to stimulate the economy. However, we're not dishing out sweeteners. This is because we are still facing a fiscal deficit of about $120 billion. We see a fiscal reserve of about $540 billion. So we are seeing quite a gap from the time when we were doing very well. So we have to offer support to those in need as well as the underprivileged. These measures are also helping with economic transformation. We have 12 measures to help SMEs. We are doing our best to help them. At the same time, we are boosting economic growth. For example, we have the BUD Fund. We're helping the e-commerce sector. We are helping them to make use of technologies such as AI. So among these 11 measures, some of them are support measures. For the F&B sector, we are easing restrictions for the relevant approval mechanism, and we have the new mechanism for people to apply for outdoor seatings. We're also allowing pets to enter restaurants. All these measures are boosting the economy. So we have to look at our financial position and do our best to offer those in need. Jessica Law from Now TV. Chief Executive, you mentioned that we are facing a fiscal deficit. That's why the government is not dishing out the sweeteners. Can you tell members of the public when there will be measures that will benefit everyone in Hong Kong, for example, sweeteners? Well, I do want to roll out policies that would please everyone. However, government is not a business organization. We have to, based on the actual circumstances, devise policies. We can't be sure of the future changes yet, but I'm very confident with the future of Hong Kong. One of the major themes of this policy address is to give full play to our strengths. We have been leveraging our strengths, and this time round, I am pointing out one new strength. We are seeing a change in order. Many mainland enterprises would like to go global through Hong Kong. We should not rely on one single market or one single country. We have to tap into new markets. In the past, we have been bringing in enterprises, but this time round, I believe with this measure we will see breakthroughs in terms of our growth. I would like to seize the opportunities and bring enterprises to the global market. For example, enterprises can set up headquarters here, their wealth centers here, as well as set up their supply or industrial chains here. I believe that next year we will see growth. Stay tuned, please.
Welcome back to the forum. Now, over to you, Ms. Jessica Law of Dow TV. Now, Chief Executive, there's much said in the policy address on housing supply, in particular, white farm secondary market scheme. And what about private housing market? There's not much said on that. And there are no new measures. Is it because you believe there's stable supply of private housing and the transactions also stable, so there's no need to stimulate the market? Or maybe do you still think that private housing prices are still high, so you want them to come down slowly further? Now, the government's policy is to see a stable development of the private housing market. We don't want major fluctuations in prices. Some say housing in Hong Kong is expensive, some say it's not. So it's really up to individuals. For example, there are some international studies that says that based on our income level, it takes 14 years for people to buy a flat. And for many years, property housing prices are ranked high globally in Hong Kong. But then whether housing is expensive or not is a matter of personal consideration. From the point of view of the government, we want to see a stable development of the housing market. That means we don't want to see speculation. That's the first point. Second point, we want to see stable prices, and then there must also be stable supply. From figures, we can see that in terms of both prices and quantity, that's rather stable. And then there are others doing ranking. They believe that the property market has already bottomed out. So it is, of course, a matter of judgment, but then it's always a personal consideration. That's why the government's policy is that, first of all, we want to see stable development of the housing market, both in terms of prices and quantity. We believe that the situation is steady now, and then there could be healthy development. And second point, we want to see transparency of information. That is, people can tell what is the supply levels, then they can make a decision. And then the third point is there are different housing ladders. When can people buy the homes? If they could buy homes right away from the private market, that's great. But if not, they can go for GSF or HOS flats. GSH flats and HOS flats, that is. So the government wants to take care of the housing needs of different sectors. Now, Ho Yunyi of Cable TV, over to you. Now, apart from the HOD accountability system, you say you want to strengthen the performance appraisal system of civil servants. Now, in the past 3 years, only 40 civil servants were not allowed salary increment. Now, it's almost automatic for people to get salary increments. So as long as they don't make mistakes, they don't need to perform well. So that's what people think. So about this salary increment issue, would you consider only granting it to those with good performance? Well, actually, there is need to make recommendation for salary increment. It's not automatic. And if the appraisal system is robust, then when we consider whether a person should be granted an increment, we'll consider whether the person has performed well, or maybe there's room for improvement before that person should be granted increment. So that's why the fairness and reliability of an appraisal system is important. Now, I've been a civil servant for many years myself. Usually, the grading is good or above average, and very few are graded below average. That's why we need to consider a mechanism that is fair to all civil servants. For example, Yunyi works really hard. She doesn't sleep at night, and then she really delivers well on all her tasks. But then I don't do much, so it's not fair to you then. So that's why we need a fair system. But then the system needs to be fair, not just to you, but to everybody. So we need a system that can differentiate different performances. For example, there are free ranks or grading, whether it's the person actually deserves a certain grade, for instance. We need to have a good mechanism to decide on that. And then it will be fair to dedicated civil servants. And for other civil servants that need to make improvements, then it's also fair in a way. Of course, it's not easy to develop such a system. All the tasks I have suggested aren't easily achievable, but that doesn't mean we won't do them. But then, of course, there's need for us to talk to civil servants. So we need a good and balanced system, so that we could allow the good civil servants to stand out even more, and then it will be easier when we consider promotion. Let's say there are 20 persons under me, all are graded either A or B, then it's difficult to choose who to promote. But then maybe among the 20 persons, they all have different grades from A to E, and of course we'll then consider only those with a grade of A or B, and then for those with a grade of C, then we have the president to tell why I should promote him, for instance. And then we need to, of course, consider actual circumstances. We need to talk to our colleagues first. I think fairness is the most important. Well, let's switch to a different subject about imported workers. In the policy address, there is this enhanced scheme to combat abuse. Starting from tomorrow, there will be new requirements for waiters and junior cooks. But then from the latest unemployment figures, we see that unemployment rate is 6.8% already for the catering sector. Would you actually consider stopping labor importation for certain sectors? Will it be too late to wait till you complete the review next year? And then if there are employers breaching the rule, you will punish them so they can't import workers for 2 years, but then maybe it's not deterrent enough? Now, what is the policy about, really? In 2023, when we devised this policy, we saw a labor shortage. And one reason is because there's an aging population, so there are fewer workers. So that's one of the factors. And now, the challenge we face is economic transformation. So there's a change of trends in certain sectors. For example, I mentioned just now in the catering sector, some are actually doing well. For example, the fast food restaurants, they are earning more by 4%. So they may need workers. So shall we ban them, stop them from importing workers altogether? It's not right. And so if they don't have, maybe for some, they could have tide over the hard times, but they need workers. So then we should allow importation workers. What is important is that we stop abuses of the system. Now, we want to import workers only because they can't hire local workers, so we need to make sure about that. And say if they truly could not hire local workers, do we allow them to import workers? That's why I agree there is a need to monitor the market dynamically. And now we see for these two job types, they account for almost half of the imported workers. So they're the primary categories. And then some businesses actually have to import workers. As I mentioned, some are actually making more money now. They have better business. And then others, they may be struggling. But I think what is most important is whether you have good reasons to import workers. It's the case that you're not able to hire local workers in 4 weeks. Now we're extending that to 6 weeks. And then secondly, there is a need to have recruitment on site, and we may call and ask, how come you didn't hire John Lee, and then you have to give a reason. So that's the first way of tracking. And the second, we can't change the ratio of 2 to 1. You have to hire 2 local workers before you can hire 1 imported worker. There's no way you can change this ratio. This ratio cannot be applied across the company. Now, if it applies to a certain job type, so if it's a waiter, it's waiter, and if it's junior cook, it's junior cook. And as I said, we will do dynamic studies. Definitely, we can't wait 2 years. I'm very anxious too, as you know. So that's why we watch this very closely. It's important to crack down on illegal workers, because illegal workers take the jobs of local workers. So we need to crack down hard on illegal employment. And that's why I've asked the enforcement departments to do more. They have to set up a reporting hotline too. And then, of course, it's not just about the illegal workers. The employees also breaking the law if they hire illegal workers. So that's why we need to combat illegal employment. But then we have to decide whether a business is truly unable to hire local workers. Now, we can't ask the business to fold up just because it can't hire people, right? And as I said, there is economic transformation. Well, that's one reason why the unemployment rate is high. because in this process of transformation, I simply can't keep my business afloat. So, and then this person may become unemployed, but then it takes time for another business to eventually hire this person. Maybe the person doesn't want to work in another district, and so there's often a time gap between jobs. But then the key is about combating abuses and illegal unemployment. We need to make sure that imported workers are imported because the employer is unable to hire local workers. That's an important principle. Thank you. That's the end of this session. Let's take a break and we'll come back soon.
Welcome back to the Policy Address Forum. Chief Executive, one of the key words in this policy address is AI. It is mentioned that an AI efficacy enhancement team will be set up. Some civil servants told us that they're worried if AI is widely applied, they will be replaced by the technology. What is your view on this? Note, AI development is inevitable. The entire world is making use of AI. One advantage about AI is that it can boost our efficiency. Say I have a lot of things that I want to achieve. Even if I can achieve them, I'll need people or others to help me. So, will there be a possibility that AI will replace manual labor? It might be possible, but in the near future, we will mostly be enjoying the service as well as the efficiency brought by AI. Of course, we might see a change in the mode of our work. In the past, we had the internet, but we're now at the stage of Internet Plus. Our lives have changed because of the internet. We can't make a judgment too early, but I believe that in the coming few years, we will be enjoying the positive things brought by AI. But of course, there are risks behind. For example, there might be risks to personal privacy as well as security. We have to guard against that. We should make use of AI and at the same time guard against the security risks. So the government is going to take the lead to use AI. According to international reports, in some places, 30% of their population are taking part in AI-assisted work. So they are unconsciously assimilated into the AI system. And I believe this is happening in Hong Kong as well. So I want to speed things up. I want to be able to enjoy the perks brought by AI. Lam Ka-ping from RTHK. I'd like to ask about AI too. Hong Kong Guy is the first AI system developed in Hong Kong. I want to know what shortcomings there are about AI development in Hong Kong. And AI told me that we have to speed up industrial development. We have to have more talent and the relevant training mechanism. And how do you view what AI said? That's why I am proposing all these measures in my policy address. We are still quite new in terms of developing or making use of AI. Same for other governments. We are seeing the initial phase of AI development. Of course, the government will have to devote more. We want to bring ourselves closer to AI. We want wider adoption of AI as proposed in the policy address. The Census and Statistics Department has been making use of AI and we see a boost in efficiency. I am quite surprised about the result as well. We need data as well as use cases if we want to make use of AI. The more the data we have, the more helpful it will be. For example, there are 10,000 books and we can make use of AI to read all the books. For use cases, we'll have to decide how AI can help us in our work. So we need to promote the use of AI. There could be numerous use cases and application scenarios. I have dedicated a part in my policy address saying that if we want to boost our competitiveness, we want to start using AI soon. Mr. Conrad Lau from TVB. For a few years in a row, you have been in your policy address promoting fertility, and this year one of the measures is to extend the claim period of additional child allowance for newborns. Now the $2,500 student grant have been abolished, and this is some parents' concerns. Without the student grant and even with the additional child allowance, how should parents overcome the challenges? Will you consider rolling out the student grant again? Now, one thing about the previous student grant is that there is no vetting mechanism. For both the old and the rich, they all get 2,500 student grant. So should we make better use of our resources? We have different types of subsidies and allowances for members of the public. If they want subsidies or allowance for using the internet or for the textbooks, they may apply for the relevant grant. In terms of the overall use of our resources, as I mentioned, we're still facing a fiscal deficit, and our fiscal reserve has shrunk by half. As said in the press conference, the recurrent expenditure on social welfare is 60% of our money. I have over 10 bureaus and departments. If you divide it by 15, it's about 5.6% each. So if we focus on one area, that's 60%. Some departments and bureaus are very understanding. They know that we have to tackle certain areas first. For healthcare and education, they involve almost everyone. So I think it is worthwhile for us to spend the money. We need to take care of the underprivileged, so we have the social welfare expenditure. For some bureaus and departments, they may not be able to get an even share of resources, but they accept that. And over the years, the community recognizes our devotion of resources into education. And that's why, even we are a small city, we have 5 universities that topped the first 100 in the world. And so we have to leverage our strengths in the education sector. So we should spend more on this. For healthcare, again, it involves everyone. I hope that people would understand that even with limited resources, are trying our best to help everyone in need. Jessica Law from Now TV. I'd like to ask about the pro-birth policies. You said that each newborn will get $20,000 of cash. Now the government has spent about $800 million for about 40,000 newborns. For the rest of the fund, would you consider dedicating them to talents? For incoming talents, if they give birth to a child in Hong Kong, would they get the $20,000 cash allowance so that you can encourage them to take root in Hong Kong? Well, I'll be very careful in terms of how I'm going to use the money, because I do want to help the newborn babies in Hong Kong. The $20,000 of cash allowance is just one of the measures to encourage fertility. We have measures such as allowing people to select their housing units first, and other measures to encourage fertility. I encourage talents to come to Hong Kong. I encourage them to take root in Hong Kong. And for those who can get the cash allowance, they must be permanent residents of Hong Kong. We're not a hotel. I believe we all agree. Apart from the cash allowance, I think childcare services are important too. For those aged below 3, and even those aged between 0 and 2, they'll get more of such services. Also, I'd like to ensure continuity of services. That's why those aged between 0 and 2, they'll get the relevant services as well. Now, having a child is an important decision. Of course, if the government can influence your decision, we'll try our best, but it is also a personal decision. If people are successfully encouraged by the government, well, there are cases that people get influenced by the government's policies. Can we yield results through these measures? This is my hope. Well, there are figures showing that there is a drop of our birth rate. But I do believe that we have to create an environment that's encouraging. In the past, we said we wanted 2 or 3 children at least, but now people are happy no matter how many children they have. So what I want to say is that I will continue to promote fertility. Thank you, Chief Executive, for being here to share with us our views on the policy address. Thank you. I also thank all the representatives of the various media organizations to attend this forum. This is the end of the forum today. Good night.